Hello, hello. Hope everyone is doing well. We're gonna get started in just a second. Hold on, because I'm noticing a bunch of stuff that is still broken from when my PC crashed. So, give me a second. It's also why you see a bunch of testing in the chat too. Trying to pick shit up before we get going. Let's see, what else do I need? Let's see, I think it's this one. There we go. There we go. Hey, there's no transitions. Dang it. I thought I fixed everything. Hey, we're gonna do that after the stream. Hope everybody's doing well. Yo, Henrik. Good to see you. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. God. On with the camera. Hey, getting out today. Oh, and I need to activate my lights. Yeah, it's good to see you both here, Henrik and Adam. I hope everyone is doing well. How's both of your weeks been going, huh? How has the week been? Let's see. Activate this light as well. There we go. This week has not been bad. Awesome, awesome. Good to hear. Falco is here too. Hello, Falco. Good to see you. Enjoying the indie art drop? I still need to have a look at it, actually. I feel like I've been desperately behind on like any art drops that are happening. So yeah, I need to get into it. But I did see some of the people that worked on it that I kind of follow, like Iowana, like posting her work. That was sick. It's looking awesome. But yeah, it's been a busy week over here. I'm basically doing a whole bunch of what is that doing in the middle of the screen? Go away. Go away. I'm basically doing a bunch of ramp down tasks for the team challenge. So what does that means that I'm basically talking to all the mentors that were involved with the challenge, and I'm trying to get like a bunch of feedback and also action points to take into the next team challenge as well. So I spent like an hour with each mentor, just really talking through the things, like how they felt, like how we can improve, all that kind of stuff. I have one more mentor to go, and then we can collect all that data and build like a list of stuff that we want to action on next time. So that is probably going to be what I'm going to be working on this week as well. So tomorrow, my last meeting, then collecting all the data, and then we will have like our own internal post-mortem for the team challenge. And then we can basically look at the stuff that's like the most important to do for the next team challenge. So yeah, that's going to be good. Weirdly enough, I've also been doing a little bit of art on the side as well. Like I've been doing a little bit of Unreal Engine, making a little bit of time here and there. I don't know, I really just felt like setting up like a bunch of material functions. So I thought like, why not carve out a little bit of time for that too? And that's also going to be included next time for the team challenge as well. So I'm kind of building a library that we can then also use for the team challenge in the future as well. That's going to be good. Had some fun with that. Oh yeah, and then also I did this. Still a work in progress. Trying to learn Three.js at the moment. Why? Why? Make art. So have like all the team challenges. I got them all printed out. These guys are still looking for a home, but these guys are ready to go on the wall. So, but they were out of frames, so I need to get more frames. So, yeah, that's also something that I've been doing today. A nice in-between task. And then, yeah, I need to see what I'm gonna do because like the wall is gonna run out soon. But yeah. I mean, that is interesting though, Hendrik. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing in Three.js? Oh, there's so much to learn. It's a never-ending thing. Yeah, but otherwise, what has been happening? Let me think. Yeah, it's just been busy at work, coming home, doing all those meetings. So hopefully that's done soon. But yeah, I really appreciate like all the feedback that everyone has been giving who participated in the team challenge. It was really helpful, and it's really going to help us go into the future. It's really going to help us a lot. So I appreciate it. At the moment, crying. Nah, I started loading it and looking to see what's possible. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I have like a bunch of things that I want to do with that as well. I want to... probably the first thing that I'm going to be looking into is material layering, because we had like a really good workshop on that. And ever since that workshop, I'm like, oh, I really need to learn this. That is basically why I was starting with material functions first. And then what I was going to do is then move up to material layering and then start building out a material library, and sort of like I want to build out a pipeline that I can then use for all the projects going forward and build like a lot of flexibility into it. Hello, Alejandro. Welcome. The storage drive is back. It is. I still got my dead one here somewhere. Oh yeah, here it is. The freaking culprit. I think honestly it might have short-circuited, or it might have been like a bug that should be resolved with firmware, but because I never updated the firmware, apparently it's like a ticking time bomb, because they made I don't know, there was an issue with it that was like implemented and fixed in the firmware like really quickly, but I just never updated it. So now I just have this freaking dead drive. Oh well. The good thing is that the way that I'm kind of storing everything right now really proved valuable for this kind of stuff. So yeah, I basically have like all my projects, like all the important stuff on my NAS server that is like right next to me. And then basically I just use my drives for temporary stuff. So like programs, Windows, all that kind of stuff. So if something crashes, I don't lose any data anymore, which is awesome. I don't need to be sweating about that stuff anymore. Hell yeah. Make that library to use across projects. Yeah, exactly. And also to use it on the team challenges too. I think that's going to be really valuable. Just really expanding, because I did make like a little starter content pack for the team challenges as well. But next time I really want to drive that home, so that people can just really quickly compile whatever they want to make. Where there's materials or just like, I don't know, simple effects or something like that. Yeah. It ended up being a double-edged sword. It always is. I mean, I have like a bunch of like old hard drives and all that kind of stuff where everything kind of just lands on at certain points, but I've had them since like I went to uni. But now over the past 5 years, I've made like a dedicated effort to like be really good about like backing stuff up and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it really pays off in this case. How do you think you would approach that? Just to know, would be useful. What do you mean, Henrik? What do you mean specifically? That speed things up as well. Yeah. Hopefully it would, because then you can just like git bash like pre-made nodes that we've made and just connect them up and just make like material of your own, which is good. How do you think you would approach that? Just to know, could be useful. The material library. Oh, so when I say material library, I'm not talking about like textures, right? I'm talking about materials. I mean, just to be really 100% clear here. So currently I'm literally just making like a bunch of functions. So I have like an RVT function, like a ZUp function, like a second UV function, a vertex painting function, normal adjustments, roughness adjustments, color tinting. And I basically have them all like modularized. So now I can just be like, oh, I need like a new material that I'm going to build from scratch. So I just throw in like a bunch of material functions that have like all the prerequisites that I'm going to be using anyway. And then maybe add like a little bit of custom stuff on top of that. And then I have like a new material that I can use instead of building and like rebuilding materials from scratch. The only thing that I'm thinking about is the delivery method. Oh, sorry, Henrik. Yeah, that would be really useful to know, right? I'm talking about Unreal Engine. Yeah, so I'm also looking into, I don't know if this is possible, but I have a sneaky suspicion that like the way that Unreal handles like their delivery of asset packages or like injects content into like into your projects, right? So let's say for example the third person what is it? The third person content pack or something like that, or starter pack. You can, even if you don't start with that pack, you can still inject that into your project, right? I kind of want to set this material library up in the same way, so that even if I make adjustments in like the base project that has like my material functions, I can then, whenever I do an update, like inject that into like whatever project that I'm working on. Which again is not only useful for me, but let's say I want to do adjustments because some stuff is broken and let's say 20 teams are using it during the team challenge, I can then just inject that into it and tell people to update. So that is something that I'm still trying to figure out because I don't know how that works. I've never had to do that, but I'm sure that there's like a system for it somewhere, right? Yeah. Oh, I just noticed that the questions are going away really quickly. Let me fix that, because that would be helpful. Let's see. Let me fix that up really quick, because that's gonna be annoying as shit. Let's see. So Falco was asking a random question. What is your favorite 3D program? Blender. Yeah, Blender by far. I've used Max, I've used Maya, but Blender's by far my favorite 3D program. Specifically modeling program. I think if it's broadly, well, I don't know if you would call this 3D, but like in the whole pipeline, it would be either Blender or Substance Designer, because I really like working in Substance Designer as well. Oh yeah, Houdini definitely from McVal. I assumed as much. What is everyone else's like favorite 3D program? Curious to know. That's actually an interesting question. I would also love to get some. Henrik is saying Blender. Sorry, I just refreshed his chat. Yeah, Blender and Designer here too. Nice. Painter. Oh. Bless. I haven't used Painter in a couple of years. I mean, I also focus on like the bigger picture, right? So I honestly don't like, if I had to choose between like a node-based workflow or like a layer-based workflow now, I would probably go with like node-based. I feel like so comfortable in it now that, yeah, I'll probably go that way. Which sounds really weird to say, but hey. It is what it is. Yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with Blender. I mean, I use it at work as well, so yeah. Get to have a lot of fun in it. But actually seeing some better detailed functions in Cinema 4D, right? Wishing some functions would be in Blender as well. I need to work with both at work. Yeah, a friend of mine like ages ago was using Cinema 4D because he was more into like the motion design sector, right? Because Cinema 4D is not really used in like games, apart from like maybe a handful of studios. I can't even name like a studio that would work with Cinema 4D. At least in AAA. Yeah. Because I think like a lot of the newer studios are just switching to Blender from the get-go, right? Which makes a lot of sense to me. If I were to be running a studio, like I would go for like the free program too. Yeah. What kind of functions does Cinema 4D have? Be curious to look it up. Have a quick peek at it. But yeah. Lovely little chat, but in the meantime, let's actually switch things over. And without a transition, that hurts me. And we're gonna actually be having a look into what we're all here for. So Whip Wednesday is basically my weekly feedback event that I run for our community. So anyone that's a part of the Beyond Extent community can basically tag their work as to be seen in these sessions. So yeah, if you want to get yourself and your work critiqued, maybe not yourself, I mean, I'll rather stick to the work, then feel free to sign up to the community and join up. But yeah, if you have any questions about game development or 3D or environment art or any of that stuff in the meantime, feel free to put it in the chat and we can talk about it. Let's see, I find the tags that you can apply on objects pretty intuitive, and the group and solo mode view is useful as well. Oh, okay, I need to look that up then. Is that just like, because I'm assuming that the tag system is just like an easy way to like do file management, or I don't know, run like specific things on specific, I mean, I'm being really vague here, but like execute certain actions on certain objects with a tag or something. I don't know. I'll have a look into it. Hello, Guillaume. Let's have a look. I still need to have a look at who we're going to be looking at first. So let me put up Discord again. This Discord is gone. We might as well start with you, Guillaume, honestly. There were some pretty chunky questions in there, so let's have a look. Let me scroll up and start from the top. Okay, so questions for Tim. Number one, about the ground. I used Substance Designer to create a modular material for the mosaic ground, but it still looks generic to me. What kind of variation should I add? Do you have any advice? So we're specifically looking at this section here. Oh, I forgot to drag in like one image. Let me just quickly get that image because there were a lot of images. Let's see. I think it's this one. This image kind of has me confused on how you're making the floor, but is it just like, this is one texture, right? And then you kind of chop it up into like singular quadrants, and then that's the way that you orient and like make them into your scene, which does work. But this sort of workflow kind of lends itself like really easily towards it feeling really generic as well, right? Like that's the issue that you're currently running into. Because with this workflow, what you would be looking into now is, let's see. What we basically need to look into is we need to break up the modular PO, right? But the only thing that we can do to kind of break it up is working with your modules that have been set up. But that is going to be annoying as hell. Because what you want with an Art Nouveau style is you want that kind of like natural, very flowy kind of shapes. So think back to what we said a couple of sessions ago. I mean, it's been like 2 months ago now because we missed like 2 sessions in between. Apologies for that. But a couple of sessions ago, we talked about like how I would approach it. And I would go with like a trim sheet where you can then actually model those patterns that you can see here, right? Because what you're running into now is, okay, let's say we have this corner here, which looks really generic, right? So that's what we're kind of running into now. But we need to find a way to make these patterns on top of it, which is going to be really tricky because you don't have enough space in your modular kit to actually do that. Because you have these like sections that kind of interrupt that whole flow, right? So you've made it like really difficult for yourself to actually build some sort of like natural feeling pattern into it. I would honestly go back to the drawing board and make it so much easier for yourself. So what I mean with that is I would have a tileable texture that is just a okay. I tried different variations with ornaments, but I get bored. Oh man. That is not good. Because there's a lot that still needs to be done in this environment, right? And we've talked about this multiple times before, where an environment, really, the trickiest thing about an environment is just keeping up the pace and constantly working at it and constantly improving and just making sure, right? The ornaments within Designer were too painful to create. So no, I don't want you to create the ornaments in Designer. What I want you to do is I want you to model them using the texture from Designer. So this is a great example here, right? This is a really complex pattern, but all you need is a bunch of geometry. So so this is your tileable, right? So it's like a mosaic tileable. Cool. What you then do is all this stuff is just geometry that is laid in layers on top of each other. So you have your base layer, which could be like white. I don't know, let's say this is your base layer, right? So that's your material, which is the same thing, right? Which is the same thing as your mosaic in general, right? So that's just your normal tileable texture. Awesome. Then you use that same texture with a different color, which can be easily set up in Unreal, or if you want to be really quick about it, you could just set it up with a different export, right? A different texture set with a different color. Both work fine. But then actually what you're going to be doing is just, you're going to have to model all this stuff in. And then just slap like a different texture on this guy here, which is like our number 2. And then this guy here is number 3. Right, so they all use the same texture, but they just use a different color, right? So you have your yellow pattern, your red pattern, and your white pattern. And the only thing that you're doing is you're basically taking strips. So this is your geometry laid out in your UVs, right? You just take a strip of tiles that is mapped in a straight line, but is going to be actually curved geometry, right? So if we isolate, let's say we isolate this little section here, right? We're only looking at this section, or we're going to make it a little bit more complex. Let's say this section. This would be your geo, right? But the way that you lay it out on your UVs, like on your UV sheet, like on your UV editor, is you would literally just have it as like a straight line mapped onto the straight sections of your mosaic tileable, right? Because, yeah, making all those ornaments and stuff to design it from scratch, that would be a lot of work, and I don't want you to do that. I want you to think about it in a more modular way, so that you can basically with this setup, right? Basically the one texture with 3 colors, right? Whether you want to do that coloring in Unreal Engine, because a quick tip, I know that I'm throwing a lot of information at you right now, but let's say you make a white mosaic. What you can then do in your material in Unreal is you can give it a color by multiplying over a color that you control. So that means you have 3 material instances. I'll map this out for you, right? So you got your master material. That is your white tiles, right? Or grayscale. Let's call it grayscale. That's probably like a bit more grayscale tiles. And then in your instances, your material instances, right? Then you just have 3 ones that are red, yellow, and white, right? Like you can still use like the white color and then maybe tint it to be like a little bit older. You have flexibility. But this system, this little material system, gives you way more flexibility, because now you can make any pattern you want. You just have to model it, right? So if we then look at something like complex like this, then that just means that you have to model this shape, you have to model this shape, and then just start mapping the different sections, right? Like different colors. And that's all you need to do. It is more geometry heavy, but it allows you a lot of freedom when it comes to actually modeling those details onto the floor. And that means that you don't have to get annoyed by like all this modular stuff that makes your entire environment kind of look like it's a modular kit, because you don't want to do that, right? What about the consistency of the orientation of all those squares following the geometry? So they get taken care of for the most part by your UVs, right? So we are gonna have to make a sacrifice where we're gonna introduce like a little bit of stretching here and there. But if you can be like relatively smart with like where you make your cuts and all that kind of stuff. So for example, this section here, if it's like a harsh corner, I would kind of make a cut in it. So that would be like a UV seam, and then you can just map it to somewhere else, and then you can kind of treat it like that, right? However, where you're gonna run into issues, but honestly, I wouldn't care about this, is your main tileable, so number 1, where it runs into this pattern, because your main tileable is gonna be doing this, right? So that's gonna be your main tileable. And then you're gonna run into like this border here, where you're gonna be running into your trims. But that is completely fine. Like, honestly, at this point, no one's really looking at it at such detail. Because that's completely fine. If you really, really wanted to, and this is not something that I would recommend because it kind of goes into like perfectionism territory, which I do not recommend to go in. You could make like a lot of cuts and kind of finesse your way with UVs to kind of have all these patterns as well. But that would add so much geo that it's honestly not worth your time. Right? But you could, because you have that flexibility now. So this is basically just setting yourself up for a system that is so versatile that you can map any shape, anything you want, by just modeling like a new strip or modeling like a new shape and then just mapping it like cleverly on your UVs somehow. Right? So that's the first big question. Because honestly, I mean, you know this as well, right? Like, this is what Art Nouveau is about. Art Nouveau is about those like very free-flowing, like natural shapes, right? So, yeah. From the point the UVs are following the meshes, the squares should follow around the border of the meshes, of course. Yeah, exactly. So, again, in this case, like you would just have like your base. Let's grab this section, right? So this would be your main tileable pattern, right? And then whatever comes on top of it, you just add like a new layer of geometry, right? So you have this entire border. That is going to be like a separate layer of geometry. And then whatever you need to make the pattern work, you can just make a trim, right? And then at a certain point, what is going to happen is you can keep it like really modular, even in Blender, right? Or whatever program you're using. By, let's say, oh, I've made this shape now. Cool, I can duplicate it and just, I don't know, I can change it like slightly, and then I can kind of make this pattern out of it, right? Because they kind of have like similar shapes. They just have like a couple more swirls here and there. And yeah, so that's a way of like, you don't need to make like every pattern from scratch, because after a while you've kind of made like all these patterns, and then you can kind of, yeah, you can kind of start repurposing a lot. So yeah, I hope that helps, because yeah, there's no real other way to get this sort of stuff done. I mean, so technically the way that you're doing it could also work, but then you have to be very precise in the way that you set up your modular meshes in conjunction with your texture as well. And that is honestly like, I mean, you've already done a good job, right? But there are some cuts that would be like illogical, because you kind of want to extract the shapes in a way that kind of makes sense for the modular piece, right? So just to give you like a quick example, this one is good because it has the whole shape in it. But then when it comes to something like this, right, this whole shape, you would probably want a bigger quadrant, because this whole shape otherwise, like for example, this tile is really annoying to use because it has to be very precise, and you can only use it in one case, really. So then we've made a tile that shouldn't be the tile, right? And this way it gets really tricky, right? That's why I'm saying the trim sheet way is probably way better, because it allows you way more flexibility and just way less headache. Cool. Hey, Shubhranshu, welcome back. It's been good. We went through a bunch of chaos. So last week my hard drive crashed. It fully corrupted. I had to do like a full Windows reinstall and all that kind of stuff, but we're back now. So yeah, it's been a little bit chaotic, but we'll make it through. How are you doing? And also, Marcos, sorry, I saw your name up there too. Lovely to see you as well. Okay, so question number 2. Let's even move in. So what about the light? The table is central and I don't know what to do with the background. As the newspaper talks about a monster in Paris, I could put a monster at the glass ceiling. I would honestly not do a monster. The main question that I have here is what happened to the pastry? That is the main question that I have here, because honestly, you don't need to go with a monster or something that is like, I don't know. It feels very I don't know, you're trying to cover up something with like a band-aid rather than fixing the actual issue. I think you can make this scene work by just doing what you intended to do in the beginning, right? If you just focus on the Art Nouveau angle, this scene can stand by itself and it doesn't really need like a monster or like anything else, right? It could literally just be, oh, a nice afternoon tea in this like beautiful pastry shop, right? I almost look at it as like, I mean, you're probably gonna know this, but like just a lo-fi background, right? That's the way that I'm imagining this project. It is like, it is wholesome, it is cute, it's very easy on the eyes, and it's very pleasing to look at, right? It just leans into those vibes rather than, oh, I want to create like a monster and all that kind of stuff, because it feels unnecessary for the project. So yeah, I would think about that rather than trying to make it something that it's not meant to be. Like, keep the focus on the style of the buildings, right? Like the ornamental nature of the whole building, and maybe some pastries or something like that. Yeah. There's a principle. It's the KISS principle, which stands for well, there's a second S that people throw in for flavor, but it's keep it simple, right? So keep it simple, stupid is what the last thing stands for, just to kind of make a mockery out of it. But yeah, just keep it simple, you know? You don't have to overdo it. You just have to focus on like what you're doing now and execute on like the beautiful Art Nouveau style of things. And I think that's going to be cool. Pastries will be shown behind the glasses. Yeah, but you have made them, right? You have the shapes. I would already put them in the scene. This is a good tip for anyone that's ever doing any scene. As soon as you have something, it doesn't need to look good. You just need to get it in the scene. Even if it's cubes, because it's going to add so much and it's going to allow you to play around with like, oh, I want like a bigger pile of pastry here and a smaller pile here. And yeah. So add them, if you have it, already add them in, you know? Nord is saying, I really want to have feedback on my project, but I feel like I'm not ready. I mean, it is good to get feedback at any stage, honestly. I would rather have people come for feedback like earlier rather than later, you know? So yeah, I know it's like a big hurdle as artists that whenever we put ourselves out there for the first time, it's like a big jump, right? But don't be afraid of that jump, because everyone's been there. And everyone is going to go through that phase. And I feel like the quicker that you get external feedback, the quicker that you can grow as well. So it doesn't need to be here, right? It doesn't need to be in this like public forum, but just like ask feedback to like people that you know, or I don't know, internally in a server or whatever you want to do, right? Let's see. Next one is about texel density. I'm trying to deal with a texel density with a 4K map and 12 pixels per centimeter, but I can't really justify my choice. I know that my hero props should be detailed enough to be the main target of the camera, but is 4K too big for this map? So the way that you can justify texel density is by adding a lot of detail in your assets, right? So for example, you have like a good example here, right? If this would be lower textile density. So if this would be lower textile density, then we can't read the text anymore, right? A very clear example of like, oh, this is a prop that actually needs to have bigger textile density, especially because, well, in this current iteration, you're trying to do storytelling with it, right? So we need that textile density. These pots currently, I mean, I know that I don't think you've done like a texture pass on them and all that kind of stuff yet. So that's completely fine. But the way that you justify it is by putting really ornate textures on them, right? Like flower ornaments and all that kind of stuff. That is the way that you justify it. So, yeah. Because it's not like you assigned like a 4K map to just like a singular teapot. You assigned a 4K map to all of this stuff, right? Which makes sense. I mean, they are generic assets, but they are reused throughout the whole scene, and they're really important to the scene as well. And so I don't think it's a waste at all. The main thing that I want to bring up, though, is, and this is going to scare you in the beginning, but I promise you it will be fine, is this. So that is a lot of empty space in your UV map. In terms of prioritization, it is make it really simple. Right? So that's the hierarchy. First, it's UV space, then it's textile density. The reason why is because whenever we have empty space on your UVs, that means that we're just literally throwing out performance that we can use. Because that is space that is going to be calculated by the PC, but there's nothing there, right? So just build the space out as much as you can. Don't leave any empty space. I mean, any. You're always going to end up with empty space, right? But try to minimize the amount of empty space and then get as close to your textile density as possible. So usually the way that I do this, again, it's been a while since I made like specific props, right? But I do a trial run when it comes to textile density. So I'll look at like, okay, this is how big my map is. This is how I've laid it out. Like, how close am I to textile density, right? And I'll press my textile density button, see how much space I still have left. And if it's close enough to filling up the UV space, I can then start finessing it, right? But the reason why I do it in that way is because whenever I press the textile density button and it's literally half the size of my UV space, then I know that I can scale it down from like a 4K to a 2K, right? And then, again, pack it into like a smaller texture. I don't know why I had such an empty space in my UVs. Yeah, this is really important to look at. Because, yeah, especially if you're going to then show that off in your final breakdowns and all that kind of stuff, right? That is a thing that is immediately like a red flag. That's also why I'm pointing it out here, right? So be wary of that. Make sure that you clean that up as well. It's a small thing, but it makes a huge difference. Yeah, just wanted to point that out. It's a small thing, but it's definitely going to make a difference. Cool. So yeah, we talked about that as well. So that was question number 3 out of 4. Hello, Connor. Good to see you. How are you doing? Uh-oh, red flag. Yeah, it really is. Like, honestly, because the reason why it's a red flag is because games are basically all about squeezing the maximum amount of performance out of everything on screen as much as possible, right? And if you have stuff like this happening, if let's say, okay, we're gonna do like an extreme example, right? Let's say you work in an actual production, and you do this on like all your assets. I'm picking an extreme example, right? On a very basic level, when it comes to textures, we are only 80% as performant as we could have been. So we're already just throwing 20% of our performance just out the window, right? Before we even get into like all the other stuff that we need to take into account. So that's why we need to squeeze it all in. New on-screen chat? Yeah, well, yeah, it is new. But it's because I had to like redo my whole OBS setup. So, hey, thanks for that. I mean, it's a good time to make improvements, right? On storytelling in environments, North is asking, how do you find references for that? Like, how do you make it look natural? Is it like from movie stills or like something? I don't know if that makes sense. So when it comes to actual storytelling, you can basically get it from anywhere, really. The way that I always look at it is I get a lot of my storytelling from going on vacations, right? Like being inspired by the real world. I also watch a lot of documentaries about a lot of stuff that fascinate me. So those give me inspiration for environmental storytelling too. And another big one for me is thinking about cause and effect. It sounds very simple, but it can get really complex really quickly. For example, you have a house that's decaying and the roof has collapsed, right? That also means that you want some debris on the floor as well, because otherwise, like, you don't have that cause of the debris falling, right? So like that hole in the roof is a reason why that debris is on the floor. But you can extract that to so many levels, right? Like there's a closed door, and let's say you open it. We're playing Fallout now, right? It's a closed door. You manage to lockpick it. You open it, and there's a skeleton on the floor. Okay, how did that skeleton get there? Right? And thinking through the steps of, okay, that skeleton got here because they climbed in because they were scavenging, didn't notice that the door was locked, and they couldn't get out of the roof, out of the room anymore because the window was too high and it didn't have enough stuff to prop up to get out again, right? It can be that. It can also be, oh, they got ambushed by like a bunch of wild dogs that were inside of the building still. It can be a bunch of stuff, right? But it's literally just like role-playing scenarios. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. But you can literally find it anywhere, like this sort of inspiration. Hello, Tobias. Good to see you here. Hope you're doing well, buddy. It's been a while. Says the person who didn't do Whip Wednesday for the last 2 weeks. Let's see. Last question. About UV mapping and mirroring. So with UV Pack Master add-on within Blender, I re-topologized my meshes with symmetry, and I used align similar UV items to gain some space inside a UV map. Do you think it's a good idea? I'm not too sure if align similar works in the way that I think it does, because I honestly don't really do too much of that stuff. But if it overlays islands on top of each other that are similar and you want them to be similarly textured, so let's say the bottoms of the teapots are like a good example, right? That is a way to like save yourself. That is a way to kind of save yourself a bunch of like texture space, right? Because you can kind of use the same bottom texture for like a lot of these cups and teapots and all that kind of stuff, because the likeliness of people looking at it is going to be low and you don't want any unique information there, right? Now, there's another example here. I wouldn't symmetry, or like I wouldn't overlay this one on top of that one. It would be more optimized, right? But you probably want like a unique kind of pattern on this compared to like this pattern up here, right? So we want some like visual variation. So when it comes to mirroring, that's the thing that we need to keep into account. Let me actually make some notes here. So on mirroring. So the first thing is what needs to be unique, right? Like, do I need unique information? Yes or no? The second one is, can I see the seam? Or can I see both sides in a singular viewport? The reason why I'm bringing that up is there's a phenomenon called butterfly mapping, which is basically whenever you have a thing that you symmetry, right? We're gonna make it like really pretty. This is my beautiful butterfly. If you have a symmetry seam in the middle, that basically means that we're also symmetrying the texture, which in a lot of cases, like, becomes a really clear pattern for us, because then we can recognize it as like usually like a butterfly or a face or something like that, right? Because we introduce that symmetry. Yeah, so that's one thing that you have to be careful of as well. When it comes to those smaller things, so you're mentioning the handles. The handles are less of a concern, right? So the handles are completely fine. Yeah. Also with the handles, you could make the argument that you're not really saving like a whole bunch of space, because those smaller UV islands could probably be like good to just like squeeze them into like empty spaces of your UVs. But yeah, I would say keep them now. There's nothing wrong with it either. So yeah. Cool. But yeah, overall, really well done. I love these little assets. Those assets are coming out nice, so I'm curious to see them textured. It's gonna be cool. Yeah, the floor is like the biggest overhaul, but it's gonna be so much more scalable. Like, it's a workflow that you're gonna be using like all the time as well. So that would be like really good to dive into. So yeah, I hope it helps, Yu-Gi-Oh! And thank you for sharing your work. And yeah, thank you for making the question so organized as well. Next person. Let's have a look. We're gonna start from the top now. So, oh, there's nothing in PowerTel yet. Let's see. Where's the other one? There we go. Get those two pieces in there. And then we're gonna go over to Adam. Sit down. So, cheeky little Whip Wednesday poke based on the last whip. I'm gonna start clustering cargo into the scene. Got any tips and tricks for that, as well as areas where I can place the clusters that can help lead the eye? Yeah, I would honestly keep the majority of the main focal, like the main area, open. Right, so I'm talking about like this area. Keeping that open. And then honestly just have like a bunch of like shipwrecked stuff like on the sides. I wouldn't go too overboard with the amount of pointing that you're going to be doing, because what is already happening is that you already have so many items that are pushing that way, right? So maybe what you could do here is have just like a little bit of like floating cargo that is kind of just like pointing you in that direction, maybe a little bit. But I wouldn't go like overboard with it, honestly. Because yeah, the scene has a lot of natural shapes that kind of lead you towards it. Right, so you have kind of this shape kind of leading towards it. You kind of have like this shape leading towards it. I would really play with just like how tattered and torn this stuff is. I know it's work in progress, but the reason why I'm saying that is because I want to push the contrast in shapes between natural and man-made. So that would mean that like the natural shapes are just more smooth, and then you have your boat here that is going to be more sharp looking and more destroyed and just chaotic, right? So we're playing with softer shapes versus chaotic shapes, right? Which is already happening. It would be nice to like further emphasize that as well. Yeah, let's see. I'm gonna start clustering cargo in the scene. Got any tips and trips in that, as well as ideas where I can place the clusters to help lead the eye? Yeah. I mean, honestly, the cargo can just be like relatively generic, right? I think what is gonna happen, what would be interesting is just the texturing of the individual cargo pieces, right? And have a bunch of stuff just like washed up on the shore, just like a bunch of boxes that maybe could give you like slight hints at the cargo that it contained, right? Like the inventory of the ship. But it can be very subtle stuff. Yeah, and then really play with this shape. I think you can do so much more with this shape. I think the silhouette is already really nice. It's just the shape itself that needs to stand out more. I would also, I'm not sure what that is. That is like a piece of the boat itself. I would potentially do it the opposite way around, so that the sail becomes a thing that is the main silhouette, and then behind it you still have like a part of the boat itself, right? So basically just rotating it like 180 degrees. Again, the reason why I think, in my opinion, you can have way more flexibility and you can draw the eye way better with like a torn sail that is just like really shredded and torn to bits, compared to a solid object like a ship hull, right? Because that ship hull is going to blend in with the rocks, because the rocks are also like solid shapes. But like the sails, you can do a lot more with. And you also have like a lot of freedom with like a sail, right? Because you can make it look really fucked up and it could still look like a sail. Compared to like a boat where it kind of becomes trickier and it becomes like way noisier as well. Because it's, yeah, different kind of surface. So in short, more sail, less boat for the main focal point, right? Really, I'm really thinking about it in terms of shapes. The shape language of it all. Thank you for people sharing gorgeous projects. Don't hesitate to give me feedback in my thread. Yeah, I think there were like a decent amount of people that were like popping in, I think. Or, oh no, I think I was looking at a thread from who was it? From Sheila. Yeah, I was getting some nice traction. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's the way that I would do it, Adam. Short and simple. I think you're on a good track. It's just, yeah. Or a fire, it would add way more color contrast to focus on. Yeah, but I do love the subtlety of the scene. Where with a fire, you know, like, dude, Henrik, I love my freaking harsh color contrast, but sometimes it's nice to go with something that's like very eerie and very mysterious. And I think this might be one of those cases. Trying to think. What you... Okay, so if we go with that idea, you could potentially have... You could potentially have like the flag on top of it could be like a red flag or something like that. Or you could have like a red tint. Maybe. Fire will also become a bit distracting to the slight directional light I'll bring in. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah. This is the thing that I love about like being an artist, right? There's like, okay, let's go with that idea that Hendrik had, and then we can kind of twist it into something that still comes from the same source, but is more applicable to like what you want to do with it, in this case, Adam. So maybe, yeah, maybe doing something with like the flag. I don't, like, my gut says that I don't want to make it red because that is just going to be too eye-catchy, but something with like a red emblem or like a red hint or an orangey kind of hint or something like that, something that kind of grabs your attention. It's like a color pop, really. Yeah, cool. Thanks for sharing your work, Adam. I have really nice lighting ref. Color contrast will be done on the shipwreck pieces too. Hell yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, if we're gonna do the color contrast on the shipwreck pieces, then that is also something to balance with the whole thing again, right? But we'll cross that bridge once we get there. Thanks for the feedback. No worries, Adam. Thanks for showing it as well. Next one we have Darren. Darren is a new member of our community, so welcome, Darren. Lovely to have you here. Love it. I've been working on this project for a while and would love to get your personal feedback. I've already received some valuable input from Ioana a few days ago. Oh yeah, because you did a mentorship together, so that was awesome. There's some good stuff from it. Let's see, the project is based on one main reference, which I've been building upon. I created most of the assets myself, including the brick, cobblestone, and roof textures. One area I was struggling with was the stairs, especially the transition between the brick and the cement. Yeah. So I noticed multiple variations. Okay. For mega scans, I used a couple of assets like sandbags, ropes, metal barrels, planters, and ladders. So we're focusing mostly on the stairs. Let's see. I'm not too sure what specifically you're talking about, because there's like a lot of chaos going on, right? Which is fine. It's a work in progress after all. So that's not the thing that I'm concerned with. Just want to make sure that I'm talking about the right thing. Cool. So let's have a look at this. The first thing that I would do is I would focus more on geometry compared to texturing, because there's only so much you can do when it comes to the texturing if it's not supported by actual geometry in the scene, right? So for example, a good example for this would be this area here, where you have the top and you have the side. They are two different materials. Well, they're basically two different surfaces, but now it's just one surface with two different materials, which doesn't make sense, right? So what we need to introduce, let me actually see if your concept has some of that stuff. I mean, it's very, very blurry. That's more my mistake than anything else. Yeah, what you will see if you look at like a real life ref, you're gonna see that this has like a lip. Right? It just has like a trim of stone. And that is one of those things that's already gonna help, like... there's like a stone trim here, I guess. That's already gonna help with the transition between the two, right? Because that's just looking like really weird at the moment. So That's the first thing that I can... And this can be applied to a lot of things, right? So the part that I mentioned about, oh, it needs more geometry, we can apply the same thing to the actual staircase itself as well. Because we want to get the feeling across that this is like an old staircase, right? We want to go back in time. We want to sell the fantasy of, oh, this is like an old staircase. What we have to do then is we kind of have to just make it worn and warped and all that kind of stuff. Because, yeah, that geometry is already going to help us with like selling the fact that this is an old place, right? So definitely adding some geometry there. That is already going to help. And then the part where you probably want to come in is you want to focus a little bit more on... Actually, see, that seems to be blending quite right. Some of this stuff feels really flat as well. That stuff doesn't look too bad. Yeah. What I was gonna say is, so the first thing was need more geometry, both on the staircase and on the sides as well, like the lips staircase. The second part is we need to improve the blending by using height maps for blending. Because that is the thing that you were specifically looking for, right? So let's see. Especially the transition between the brick and the cement. If you want to improve that, that just means that you have to tweak your height map. Because the height map is gonna, well, make sure that you're using height blending first between the two materials. And then improve your height maps that you're using for that blending. Because that's going to improve the look like tremendously as well. There are certain areas, I don't know, it's kind of, I'll be honest, it's kind of hard to tell. Because this seems to be working fine. But I'm not sure if that is made by yourself or if that's like Megascan or something like that. So you might just have to play around with the height maps. Let's have a look. Yeah, because this texture looks really nice. There's only like a little bit of an issue here with like the tileability, which you can easily fix with some vertex painting. But yeah, some of the other textures look like really flat and noisy. So what I'm trying to say is that there's like a lot of balancing that still needs to happen between the textures. Which then might also, I'm making the assumption that if that is happening, that the height maps that you use for blending might also not be in a good state yet. So focus on those height maps, get those working like really nicely, and that's going to help a lot as well. What I would also do in terms of the consistency is I would focus on just like one texture, and wherever there is a split in textures, so let's say for example here, so this split between materials, I honestly wouldn't do it in the first place. I would just make it like the brown material that's on the bottom. But if you want to have a split like that, it needs to be supported by something. By like an edge or some geo or something else, right? Because otherwise it doesn't make sense to have a transition between those two materials there. Yeah. Let's have a look. Yeah, I have the feeling that there's a lot of tweaking that needs to be done when it comes to the shaders. The actual materials that are being used, like in Unreal. And then making sure that those use like the correct inputs as well. It's like a good height map and stuff. Let's see. Is there anything else that I can help with here? Oh, there was like one final thing that I wanted to say. If you're basing it on this concept, you need to find a way to shorten the view distance. There's a ton of ways on how to do that. You could add a curve, you could add a bend, you could play with particles, you could have like a building blocking it, whatever you need to do. Try to cut down on the view distance, because the further you can see, the more you have to make. Because yeah, we wanna sell a world, right? That's our job as environment artists. We don't want to make like a single chunk. We want to sell, or like we want to sell the fantasy that we're in a world, not just like a chunk of mesh, right? We want that sweet immersion. Yeah. Hope that was helpful, Darren. Again, welcome to the community. Lovely to have you here. And thanks for sharing your work. Next up is Swan. The question here is, let me move up. Where's Swan? Here is Swan. Beautiful piece. This is coming together like really nicely. Those stones underwent like a massive overhaul, but I do like how soft they feel now. They do feel really, really soft. Thanks for the feedback. No worries. Happy to have you again. So let's see. What was the question? Are the items I have in my scene, should they be pushed further or need some edits? Or what should I address to help elevate the scene? So what we're trying to sell here is the fantasy of, hey, these are people coming in to like explore this tomb, right? So we do want to try and sell that like fantasy a bit more if we can. And we can do that with a couple of quick things, right? So number one, let me move to the side here. So we want to sell the fantasy more. So what that could be is adding like a torch in here, right? Just indicating that someone is there or has been. It can even just be a light, like a slight light just coming from the end of the tunnel, so that we get this idea of like, oh, there's people in here, right? And that's, you could make that as cheap as you want, right? You could make the full torch if you want to have it at the entrance, or you could just have a light in the distance and kind of have it as like, oh, someone's in there now. Like in the tunnel, you can then also sell like some additional footsteps or stuff going in. And even with the footsteps, you can indicate the amount of people, right? Sorry, I'm just adding new stuff, not like commenting on your existing stuff. So we can then use those footsteps to like indicate an amount of people that are in this tomb, right? Which could be interesting. I was being a silly boy. Okay, so we got the footsteps, we got the light in the tunnel. We can also just like do an indication here with just like rotational scratches onto this surface, right? To indicate, again, the cause and effect, right? What I was talking about before. So that you can kind of give this indication of like, oh, people actually moved this thing out of the way. And it left scratches on the main door, right? Sort of just like cause and effect of the two things. Would the footsteps and the scraping be done through a decal? Yeah. Do like a quick little thing. It's a great question, but you can easily do that with like a decal. And the light in the tunnel could literally be just like a point light at the end of the tunnel. You know, maybe a little bit of flickering or whatever you want to do. Depends on how far you want to go with that. Hello, Coffee. Hope you're doing well. Good to see you here. Cool. So that's like the environmental storytelling kind of side, right? Oh, let's see. Wait, let me read the context first because I dive into like a bunch of stuff again. Still need to add smaller rocks that hit that big, medium, large. Big, medium, large. It's big, medium, small. We're gonna go from like big to medium to large again. Come on, Swan. However, before I get into the weeds and start adding dressing decals and such, I want to make sure the bigger picture looks decent first. Yeah, I think you got like a good picture already. If you're gonna add like more of those smaller assets, I think it's perfect to go on ahead. Yeah. Yeah, there's like a bunch of cool stuff that you can do, right? Like having like a decal or like even a mesh that is just like a trench here. A trench to indicate that this thing got moved out of the way, right? That could be cool as well. Because I think with a scene like this, those are the details that are gonna matter, right? Yeah, really think about like how. Yeah, no worries. I mean, I typed like a bunch of stuff wrong too, so. I mean, I still haven't figured out how to write silhouette, even though I have to do it a lot on stream. But yeah, so that's what I would focus on first. Like get some of those storytelling things out of the way. Get the big, medium, small in there. I think you're on a good track. This scene looks really good already. The texture work is really well done as well. Everything blends really nicely together. It looks cool. You can definitely gain way more with doing like a sandy texture kind of layer on top of like this asset especially, right? Then it could be like really cool. Or even have like clumps of sand like in between like the mains and all that kind of stuff. There's some cool stuff that you can do with that. I think more sand buildup in the scene in general could be really interesting. Nice. Okay. Thank you for posting your work, Swan. This is looking lovely. Looking forward to seeing the next update. Let's see, Harry. Harry is not here necessarily for feedback because I had to read through it already. Basically, the question is, without a lot of context here, right? I've not given you like enough context. But this is Harry's first ever project. I feel like I've learned a ton, but like Harry feels like they're close to finishing the project up already. Well, not already, but like at this point. So I think that if you already feel that way about it, and you're confident with the learnings that you've gotten from this project, there is no reason why you should keep pushing yourself beyond that point. So I wanna just put an emphasis on it's okay to have like, hey, these are the goals for my project. or like your learning goals, right? It can be learning, whatever. If they are achieved, then it's okay to move on. Because not everything that you ever do in your life needs to be like a portfolio project, right? I know that I usually err on the side of like, oh no, like productivity, like trying to like really map out your goals and then work in like the most optimal way towards them. But I do also know that that is not the reality, and that's also not how I got where I am right now. Like I did a bunch of stuff that never saw the light of day, but it taught me like a bunch of valuable stuff that I then use in my next project. Yeah, it's totally okay to move on. If you're already having those feelings, I think honestly that's the most important part. Listen to your gut in those situations, and really think about it, right? Because sometimes, and this is what every artist kind of has to figure out for themselves, is sometimes you need to push through, but also sometimes you just need to be like, hey, look, this is fine. I'm gonna move on to the next thing, right? And not beat myself over the head with it every time that I get the possibility to. So yeah, totally fine to move on, Harry. If that's what you want to do, and you feel like the project is done, 100% fine with that. Cool. Yeah, thank you for bringing that question up. I think it's an important one for everyone. So thank you for doing that. Don't forget the basics of shape language, primary, secondary, and colossal. Oh my god, I didn't see that coming. That would be good. Oh my god, that would be so silly. Imagine releasing like a lesson for a course and everything is just like stuff like that, where it's like, it seems right, but it's not. It would be so cool. Do like an April Fool's kind of thing. Get everyone off guard. I'm fine, thanks. I'm trying to beat a major burnout. Oh shit, sorry to hear that, Coffee. Well, I hope you're taking enough rest. You're not doing anything that is adding fuel to the fire. So yeah, take care of yourself first, man. Yes, I do not disagree on that one, Connor. It is very interesting. I mean, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago where someone was making like an Elden Ring inspired like scene, and they had like the massive tree in the background, right? And ever since like I saw the first screenshot of the actual game, right, like Elden Ring, I was like, who the fuck does that? But it also, it kind of leans into like a more unique thing, and it kind of really opened my eyes at like a unique thing. Let me be clear with my words. Like it really lent into like they know the rules, but they're also kind of bored of like the stalemate of games. So they're gonna bend the rules and just like do the opposite, or at least do something that is more interesting than just do the same thing, maybe with a tiny twist. I felt like they were just like, no, we're gonna do the opposite of what everyone's doing, which I applaud like the fullest degree. Yeah, it was so interesting to see that in the beginning. Yeah, I mean, it does go make sense. Yeah, exactly. That was a person who is making the Elden Ring inspired scene. Yeah. Because that is sometimes what we're missing, right? Like we get so focused on like, okay, how do I make stuff that is like commercially viable? And I mean conventionally viable. As in, we need to get into the industry, like the professional industry at some point. So everything is kind of catered towards like that. Yeah, that specific type of art that we need to create that is like technically proficient, and it has a certain set of proportions and a certain set of colors, right? We want to get into AAA, let's say. Whereas like I want to get to a point where I feel like we're kind of seeing the beginnings of it, but there's more creativity again. Or there is like more financial headroom to do like those crazy interesting things, because I think that's what the industry sort of needs, right? It needs like a little bit of a refresh. And I think both can coexist at the same time. It's just, yeah, a little bit more creativity would be awesome. I really want some breakdowns of their workflow. Haven't found them yet though. I don't think their workflows are going to be that amazing, honestly. I mean, they're probably going to be like very, I don't want to say traditional. They probably have their own spin on things, but I'm not really, well, I haven't looked at the game. I have not played it. So maybe I'm talking nonsense, but I don't assume that they have like some crazy innovative thing. They just go crazier with the fundamentals, right? I propose a big pastry or a big cat. Oh my god. There's that reminds me of the game. I don't know what the name of it is. I think it's something like They're Watching or something like that. And you're a tiny human that is being watched by like a giant police guy. Kind of makes me think about that. For me, it's crazy how the usual big, medium, small, and they twist it. They make big shapes with a lot of detail and low percentage of small detail. This becomes very clear, specifically on the boss design. Yeah, but I think the way that I see the bosses that I have in my head, at least, I'm thinking more about Bloodborne, is that because the world is, I mean, the world of Bloodborne is like more detailed because it's like inspired by like Gothic architecture, right? So they have a lot of noise already in their scene. And I feel like what they did in those scenes, they were like, okay, so we have a noisy environment already. We're gonna have to make the creature design and the boss design like even more noisy when they're like out in the open, right? And that's why you have like a lot of this like, I don't know, flaying fabric and like hair and all that kind of stuff like happening in that game. Not that I know like the actual like artistic direction behind it, but that's what I'm assuming might have happened, where they're like, no, we still want to have you focus on that. And instead of then going the opposite way, where they try to tone down the details on like the enemy design, they went like, no, we need to like go above that, right? Yeah, I would love to have a look at some of those. I don't know if they did any talks about it. There is an art book out there. I wonder if they mentioned that in the art book for Elden Ring. Or I don't know for Elden Ring. I know that I think Bloodborne has one. My favorite game. Yeah. I've not played it. It looks awesome. And I love listening to people talk about like the world building and stuff and like how crazy it goes. Yeah. Let's move back to some feedback. Let's have a look at Will's work. So my question is, I feel as the scene has some balancing issues. The left side feels very heavy. Could I get some help and ideas on how I can bring in more cohesion and balance in the scene? Don't really feel like it's too heavy, honestly. I don't really mind. Like, it feels like that's where we're supposed to be looking. So I don't necessarily think that it's too heavy. I don't know. If you wanna, from like a very top level, right? If you wanna kind of fix that, then you just need to figure out like a way where we can add like more stuff here to add to the weight of this bridge, right? That's basically what we'll be looking into then. So maybe just having like a couple of struts here, adding like a building on top of it, something like that. And making the whole scene like more build up. But I mean, again, I don't think it needs it. Yeah. I don't think it necessarily does. I mean, I do like this from like a point where it's more blocked off though. Like it's more restrictive. Right? And then it becomes like a more interesting silhouette as well. Like up here. Where you could potentially even kind of like flip it a little bit on its head. Where do we go with this? Let me see. Not gonna lie, I'm having some fun here. That is gonna be a blocky shape, and then maybe thinking about doing like a big roof up there or something. Yeah, I don't know. It's something to play around with, but I don't think it necessarily needs it. Maybe just some sticks on the rooftops instead. Raising the rooftops might make the area feel too enclosed, I think. Well, see, so that's what I was thinking too. But I don't know, this is where it gets into like personal opinion, I guess, right? Or like, well, let's say personal art direction. Because if you want to solve the imbalance, then what I'm thinking from a high level is that we need to add weight to the right side, right? I mean, we basically have two choices. Either we remove weight from the left side or we add weight to the right side. So what I tried now is like adding weight. Which I don't think it needs it, right? Like I'm just sketching because that could be an option. But yeah, but the second option could also just be like, okay, what if the left side feels too heavy? Then what if we remove some weight from here? What if we remove like this building in the back and then maybe the building up top, right? And kind of have it as like freestanding. That could potentially also help because then we're not dealing with like a solid block of a building, right? The way that I would do this is like, okay, I have this gut feeling. Let me do some tests. Let me do some trials, right? Like do like a couple of sub levels or whatever you have to do, and just do like a couple of variations. Like just hide this building, take a screenshot, and just quickly stack some buildings up here, and take a screenshot, and then see how it like matches, right? Sorry, to go back to what you were saying, Adam, maybe just some sticks on the rooftops instead. Raising the rooftops might feel the area too enclosed. What do you mean with sticks? Sticks on the rooftops. Well, just instead of what I did, let me I'm not sure. I'm trying to think about Japanese architecture, right? Like what do they have that we can kind of use? I haven't played like the latest Assassin's Creed either, so that's not a help. Like poles, kind of like Sheila mentioned, that might carry banners or lanterns. Oh, let's see. Sorry, Sheila. Maybe add some flags on the banners on the right side, waving towards the door on the left. Hello. Good to see you here. Yeah. Okay. So, oh my god, it's just like a children's drawing of like a banner. We'll just have like a couple of these banners like hanging here. Potentially. I mean, I think you could like combine all this stuff, right? In a certain degree. Because I'm a big fan of that. And we could have some banners here that like are flapping in the wind too. Yeah, then we're not, I don't feel like we're adding too much weight. We're just like doing some additional set dressing, right? It's interesting. I mean, not that I disagree with this. I do like it though. I do like it from like a silhouette breakup, right? Rebecca Williams is saying statues maybe? I wonder what kind of statues they would have in like Japanese culture. Again, this is more like when it comes to that point, it's like an exercise in my visual library, right? Those but over exaggerated. Okay, so like Adam just sent me an image here. Yeah, more like palace kind of stuff, right? Yeah, that is true. So like you kind of have like a bunch of these shapes going on, but they're like, I mean, they're relatively subdued. And then these like the, if I had to make a comparison, we're looking at like a royal building on the left and like a more commoner building on the right, right? Maybe that could also help as well. Yeah. Let's not do that. Let's not do that either. Statues could be cool. I mean, yeah. Or just like ornaments, I guess, right? Because even in these rooftops, that's, well, basically this, right? That's what I would expect on like more ornamental roofs, right? Where you have like the palace gardens or whatever. They have like a specific reason why they have like, I think they have 12 statues if it's like the Royal Majesty's, well, Majesty, I don't know if that's the correct term, but like the High Emperor like palace. There's like 12 statues on the roof, and I think all those statues have like a specific meaning. And then the lower down the rank you go, the less statues they have or something like that, I think. Marcus is saying, what about the direction of the boat on the right? A good way to balance the composition is to change the sense of direction. The boat could be going in the direction of the tunnel. Yeah, but then you don't want to lead people out too much, right? That would be like the issue with that, really. So I kind of don't mind where it is now because it kind of blends in. But as soon as we were to put it like, let's say here or something, right? Then we're kind of creating this directionality here. I think what could be good if we have like a boat like here or something, right? That kind of creates like a foreground element. That could be potentially interesting. And then maybe be too much, but I do like this one though. I think that's like a good placement for a boat. Let's see. Just something to break up the straight horizontal lines. Yeah. I think already having like a silhouette breakup, right? Even that's what I was trying to do here, right? If we removed banners. Oh shit. I drew them in. Oh no, wait. That's why I have this breakup here, right? So that we're playing around with the silhouette a little bit more. And then maybe this is too much, right? Like maybe this is like too enclosed, but then you can still like tweak it to be less enclosed. Yeah, basically all that I was trying to do with that change is to add like more weight and more dynamic nature to like the silhouettes here. So yeah, that's the thing, right? Like these banners, they kind of do the same thing, right? And they don't require you to do like a main, like a big overhaul as well. Yeah, it's a great idea. Looks like Vanessa vibe environment, but Oriental. Like a Vanessa vibe environment. Yeah, it does look really good though. I do like it. I do like it. But yeah, like if that is a thing, try like these suggestions, right? Like have a play around with like simple shapes and see how it works, because you don't really care about how they look just yet. It's more about like the weighting of them, right? Yeah. Have a play around with like adding weight there, removing weight here, seeing the different variations, and then just putting them side by side. And then even side by side, having them as like thumbnail view, you could really quickly see whether one of them goes into the right direction. Oh, Venice. Yeah. I was like, Vanessa? Who's that? It's all good. I got it now. Yeah. It is. It really is like Venice, but then in an Oriental style, which is really cool. I do like it as well. Yeah, and just like the style and yeah, the detail already looking really nice. So great stuff, Will. Yeah, play around with shapes. Sometimes what I do in these cases is I just start swinging stuff around, and I don't care how good it looks. I'm just what I'll do, and I'll do this in a professional environment as well sometimes, is I'll make sure that I have nothing checked to be checked in or whatever, right? I have nothing like urgent to go in. And if I want to try something more experimental, I'll literally start moving stuff about, like breaking the level completely. And then I can quickly see if it works or not, right? And if it doesn't, I can just like revert all the changes and it's good. And if it does, I can keep building on them. But sometimes it is nice to just completely just like break away from the study you already have and be like really brutal with things, because sometimes we end up being too fragile with what's already there and we restrict ourselves a bit too much when we could, yeah, when sometimes listening to your gut feeling could be like a massive improvement on your scene. Fuck's sake, guys. Not the first typo today, not the lost. Oh my god. Let's see. Who is next? Brian is next. I think I had a look at this one before as well. This is already posted by Brian. So we're gonna be pretty quick about it, because I mean it's still, Brian still wants to have feedback on it, but it's more like an incremental improvement that we can potentially do, right? So I'm gonna bring up some concerns that I have, and then Brian, you can take it whatever you want to go, right? Because you mentioned that this is like an abandoned clinic, and I think honestly the main thing that sort of bothers me the most is that it just doesn't read like an abandoned clinic. Like, it looks nice. It has a lot of like really nice details. But it just doesn't read like a clinic to me. Like, that is not really clear from the beginning. I think the closest that you get is like some of this stuff, right? But yeah, I feel like the story is still like pretty confusing. Plus, also what doesn't help with it is that the focal point of the scene are the chickens. But I'm just like, okay, why are we focusing so heavily on the chickens, right? I'm gonna need to jump out. Thanks again for the feedback. Keep up the good work, everyone. Hell yeah, Adam. Thanks for jumping in and thanks for sharing your work. Nice evening. Yeah, so while it's rendered really nicely, right? I love the way that it's rendered and presented, and especially the breakdowns that you have like on the portfolio piece itself look really good. But they just like distract like a bit too much from like the environment, I feel. So to me, what it actually just feels like is like, oh, this is like a random abandoned house with like chickens in it, right? Which is not a bad thing, but I'm just not feeling like the whole clinic, the clinic side of things. Because I mean, like I said, like this little vignette is really cool, right? But then all this stuff in the background is almost like it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? And I know that that is like a big thing to potentially fix, right? But yeah, those are just like my gut feelings when it comes to it, honestly. And I think because this is especially relevant to, because you're saying I'm currently trying to push for getting an environment / prop artist job, right? And especially as an environment artist these days, what you'll be doing is making sure that you can tell compelling stories and that I, as a player, can know what story you're trying to tell, right? And that's why I kind of hammer on that point so much. Because this could be a cute scene of like a bunch of chickens just living in an abandoned house. But then I still want to have more from that abandoned house, right? I want that to have its own story as well. And then the chickens are like story part 2, right? Yeah. Those are just like my main comments here. Like I said, like I have nothing really bad to say about like the rendering, the execution of the pieces, the way that it looks. Some of it looks like really nicely rendered. There's more renders as well in the breakdown too. Yeah, textures look nice. The way that you set it up looks nice. It's just the storytelling could be drastically improved. So I hope that was of any help, Brian. There's just my gut feelings about the whole thing. So yeah. Thank you for sharing your work. Let's go to Malta, or Mikval in this case. How are the rocks looking in the scene shape-wise? I bashed 2 pieces together just to get some quick shapes. Yeah, I think those work, right? I feel like the size of the cracks is like really big, but you're also going for like a more stylized look, so I don't mind it, honestly. But yeah, just in terms of like the placement, I mean, yeah, they're like really big because that's the top piece and that's the stuff that we're seeing here. So yeah, no, visually this works. I would dare you to cover this whole section of the mountain, because that's going to be more indicative of like if the rocks are actually working, right? Because honestly, at the size of these bad boys over here, this is literally 3 rocks by the looks of it, right? Like it just looks like You got this rock under the bridge, you got like a rock here, and then you got like another rock. Meg Val, let's go. Let's go, chickens. Let's see. Are the edges too clean and do they need to be broken up? And do they look sharp enough? I think the edges have improved a lot, honestly. So the way that you're highlighting them as well, like adds to the detail too. I'd be curious to see. I do feel this would be really interesting to see with like just more stuff in the scene, right? Because my gut says that the shapes are just like too big, and it almost makes me want to take the rock and just scale it down by like 50% to see if we get like more intricate details. Because I just feel that some of the shapes are like too big. Let's do a comparison here, right? What I mean by that practically is, okay, let's say I'm a person? Question mark? Then this section is like 3 meters, right? And this is one of like the smaller ledges that you have on your rock, where I kind of want to have more detail on this scale, or then you have to do like a lot of set dressing with like secondary rocks to kind of make up for that fact, right? That's just my gut feeling. So I would honestly give it a try. Like, I would honestly test this in Unreal first, right? Don't do any Houdini work. I would just scale it down, see how that looks, place a bunch of rocks, and then see what kind of scale that you're actually looking for before you then go through like the whole Houdini thing again, right? Go for like the quickest solution here. So yeah, play around with the shapes. That's basically what this comes down to. Or play around with the scale. Because for example, this scale might actually work really well for large cliff faces, right? But might actually not work for stuff that's closer to the camera and you're expecting more detail. Let's see. Are the cracks working or are they too intense or too frequent? So this is where they sort of work at this scale because there's not too many of them. But obviously with my previous comments, that's where they kind of, it would fall apart again, right? They do be big. I want to try and add some foliage and stuff and see how it looks and then adjust afterwards. Yeah, I would. That's a good way of going about it, right? Like I would do a couple of tests, like have a couple of areas where you keep the rocks as big as you can and then just start dressing them up, and then do another area where you scale the rock down and then do the same pass on them again, right? And then see which kind of reads better, because I have the feeling that if you're gonna add, I don't know, some foliage here, like let's say these are like the foliage leaves, right? Because I mean, we're looking at a scale of like, oh, this is 3 meters. So let's say like a bunch of ivy is going to be this big. And then once we see that in context, then you might feel the same way, potentially. But obviously, there's also like a stylization that goes into it as well, right? Because sometimes you want those like nice and chunky shapes. So that is more up to you. That's why I'm not definitive of like, no, these are too big. That's why it's all question marks, and you have to decide what you want to do with the scene, right? But like you said, getting the context is great here. So these are pretty big rocks. Is 50k plus polygons fine? I had it at 13k, but it gave me a poor bake. I mean, 50k for like a large asset like this, if it's literally 30 meters, right? I don't think that's too big of an issue, but like you still have like a large buffer though, because you said, oh, I had it at like 13k, but that gave me a poor bake. But even if you were to go up to like double the amount to like 26k, like that's probably going to give you like enough geometry, right? Because the difference between 13k and 50k is big. So I would still try to like go lower. For this stuff, it would be helpful to see your wireframe, of course. So just looking at like the weighted geometry, because that's going to give you the best idea. Because I think you can definitely go lower on these guys though. Because a lot of it is just like large shapes, right? Yeah, you do have like some tiny silhouette changes like this, but they might even be too tiny for the way that you're going to be using them. Yeah, because for example, right, like you don't necessarily want to be using something for this scale to go for like tiny silhouette changes. So for that, you would actually add like a rock here that is like smaller and kind of has like all those small like silhouette changes, right? So that you get that nice silhouette with like more denser rocks that you then dress on top of it. That makes sense. Because otherwise you're trying to do too much with a singular cliff face, right? Which is also not going to work. Yeah. So I would definitely prefer to like crunch this one down and then do additional set dressing with like smaller rocks to get more of those crunchy shapes that you're after, probably. And then last question. Finally, any quick thoughts on the texture? It's pretty quick, but I think it's towards the direction that I'm going for. Yeah, I would. There's a huge difference here between like the Substance and Unreal Engine viewport, right? So I do like the variation that's going on here. So yeah, it feels like it does get like a little bit washed out here as well. So that might be something to look into. But yeah, try placing it in the entire scene, right? Or like at least on like a large cliff face, because that's going to give you a better idea. So yeah. Once we get that, like if you do that for next week, then we can talk about it more in depth. So set dressing this cliff for context. I just realized that like half of the time I'm just drawing behind the chat. Cool. Thank you, McMel. I spent no time in Unreal to adjust it, so Painter is more representative. Yeah, but the thing here is though, like you're gonna be rendering it inside of Unreal, right? So that's where you should be balancing things, not in Painter. Because what you're doing now is you're balancing a whole bunch of stuff in Painter, but then you don't know how it's going to look in Unreal, and then you might have to go to Painter anyway to like readjust things, right? So always try to cater towards like where you're going to do the presentation, right? Obviously, you're in the beginning stages. Well, not the beginning, but like you're still early on in the project where lighting hasn't been set up and all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't do like a final pass on like all the textures yet. As long as you get something that's sort of representable, we can fine tune it later. Cool. Thank you, McFell. Thank you for posting your work. Lovely to see these updates. Yeah, the shapes are like way better than before as well. So really good job on that, man. Thanks for the feedback. No worries. Right now, they're just plugged into material and that's it. Yeah, because I think there might also be like some, if you're using packed textures, they might not be set to master or something like that, because I feel like they were really washed out. So compared to the Substance Painter thing, it's either lighting or the texture thing. Okay. Let's have a look. So Alejandro is asking a couple of questions here. Let me take a sip of water. Before that, maybe we should answer a question in the chat as well. Hello, I want to become an environment artist. I'm learning Blender. What should I put on my portfolio? Should I focus more on dioramas and props to get into the video games industry faster and get noticed faster by recruiters? I mean, what else would you focus on? That's like all we do, really, right? Like maybe dioramas not specifically because you're doing like environments most of the time, but I would honestly go from props because they're smaller and more isolated, so like individual assets, and then work your way up to like learning more modular types of workflows. So like using trim sheets, using tileable textures, blending between them, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, if you're just getting started, this takes a while. So I love the ambition, but there's a lot to learn here. So I would focus on really small stuff and really try to see each project as like, hey, I'm trying to learn this skill and I'm going to cater a project towards it. Because what happens a lot is that, and I say this from experience, what we want to do in the beginning is we want to put those worlds that we have inside of our head, those visions, we want to put them in 3D. That is not going to happen in the beginning. It's just not. Because there's so much technical stuff that we need to get used to and learn ourselves before we can actually get to executing it, that you just have to take it step by step in the beginning. So take it slow, start small, and just keep building up momentum. And then, yeah, you can get started with like dioramas after a certain point. But you need to make sure that the individual asset, you kind of have like a good understanding of like the whole workflow. And that's like a whole chunk by itself. But you need to get started with that before you can then move on to other stuff as well. Because one thing builds onto the other. So yeah, thank you for the question, 3D Art. Let's go back to Alejandro. The first question is the focal point more established now? Let's see. I don't know why this one is here. I guess I'm missing some context, but we'll see in a bit. Is a focal point more established now? So not necessarily, because there seems like there's nothing to do there yet. So if you want to attract like people's attention, you have to do something here to add additional interest. Because what happened between the previous iterations is that, this is interesting, right? Let's see. Whenever we talked about it last time, which is like a couple of weeks ago, right? If we do like a one-to-one comparison, we're going to see something really interesting. I mean, it's also based on my feedback as well, right? But if we look at a couple of weeks ago, and then we look at this one, basically everything else became more detailed apart from your main focal point. So just from like a focus point perspective, you want most of the attention going towards the thing that is actually going to be the focal point, right? Whereas it seems like a lot of work went into all the parts that are not the focal point. So something to consider there, right? What I do really like in the new update is that it's not a wide street anymore, which already helps us like read this space like way better, because we've put like a significant block on this area, right? So let me do like a paint over here. So this became more restricted compared to seeing this massive open thing, which already helps us like stay basically in this area, right? That's the area where we're now restricted to visually, which is already good. So it's already an improvement. Now we need to find a way to not let us wander aimlessly, but we want people to focus up on this building. So I don't know, what you could do is put like, I'm thinking cyberpunk terms, right? Massive freaking billboard. Maybe this is, maybe it has like a couple of lights. Hold up. I'm gonna move some stuff about. Let me remove all this stuff because that's not relevant. Okay. Sorry, I need to do a little bit of cleanup here. Oh. So we got these two small ones. And that one. Let me put that to side here. Okay, there we go. Got some more space. Let's see. So yeah, what I was thinking is, okay, what if we have like a big billboard, right? Maybe, I don't know, I'm thinking about a mechanic shop, so it has like one of those like cringy like mechanic things against it. I'm going like more fantasy-ish, right? But you can kind of do the same thing with whatever you want to do. Or you can make it as realistic or a fantasy as you want to go, right? And then have like the garage like slightly open. And then we see like, I don't know, a car in the inside. And that car is literally just going to be from like a free pack that we find somewhere, right? I don't really want you to make a car necessarily. But it just goes about like, okay, how are we trying to sell the scene? And then we can kind of play with some light in this scene, right? So I'm imagining this to be nighttime now. Which then helps us to be like, okay, this is an LED panel. It has like a couple of broken panels, but it still lights up, right? So we're getting like light from here, and then we can also potentially play with like light coming from here, and that allows us to automatically focus a lot of the attention towards like this shop. Maybe even to the point where we don't need like a billboard. It can just be like an unlit billboard. But it allows us to paint or like draw the attention to like somewhere else, right? And then you can, I don't know, have like a pile of tires, another pile of tires, you know, like make it really feel scrappy. Have like a dumpster bin here. So what I'm trying to do with all these assets is I'm trying to add more detail to this area. Same thing with the road, right? Like even the road can be like a good indication or like a good way that we can focus up things. So let's say we restrict the road to be like, maybe we'll do like a single lane? I don't know. And maybe this is where the customers park their car. And so there's going to be like parking lots over here. That just restricting the space where we can see, and just like creating a flow with just like leading lines can help us a lot as well. Right, so I went with like a mechanic, but you can apply this to like any sort of like style or thematic that you want to go for. And also another benefit of making it nighttime is that now we need to spend way less time in the background, because I see that you're spending a whole bunch of time on the background, but we haven't figured out what is going to be in the foreground yet. So we need to switch that around, right? We need to focus on what is important first, and then we can figure out what is going to happen in the background. So we need to switch things up, right? I just noticed that you're back as well, so I had like a little conversation here where basically it came to the point where you were spending a whole bunch of time not on the focal point. We need to make sure that it's the opposite, where we focus on the focal point first and then do the background, right? I did also say that I really like the adjustments that are already made, and that it kind of feels like we're more restricted to this space here, which is awesome, right? So awesome work on that. Now we just need to make sure that we're focusing on the main focal point, that becomes the attraction, right? So yeah, great progress there. Let's see. Is it too busy? I'm making the slums down. I want it to look dirty, but not overwhelming. I should make sense. It should all make sense, like everything is there. So what is going to be really important for Slumtown is clustering. So it's a really scary thing to do when you're like relatively, well, I don't know how new you are, but even for pretty advanced people, making something that is so dense and cluttered is still scary though. So a couple of tips here on creating clutter. We need to cluster things together. And the second tip is we need to look at the amount of noise that there is in the scene. So these kind of go hand in hand, right? So you could have like a big fucking trash pile here, but then if the rest of the scene is kind of like clear, then that's fine. However, if we're going to make everything trash, then nothing is trash. Right? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we kind of need to find a way to balance the amount of dirt that we want to have, and we don't want to scatter it randomly. I'll give you an example here with the tires and these piles, right? These random piles, I would honestly put them in like this area potentially, where this is just like an alleyway where people dump their stuff. And then maybe it spills out a little bit in this area. And then maybe we can, let me move. And then maybe we can also do the same thing here, right? So there's like a trash pile over here as well. But I would not cluster the whole scene. I would keep the center of the scene relatively clean and do interesting stuff with like small bits of trash, like that you see on the side of the road. But keep it subtle. Keep it subtle. So yeah. Balance everything out. So we need to cluster everything together. We need to be wary of our noise that we introduce into the scene. And yeah, it's honestly noise versus rest is going to be a huge one here. So areas of rest. I don't know if I still have screenshots. I think I might have lost them all. That's one thing that I didn't back up. Let's see. Oh no. Yeah, that might be the thing that I did lose. Oh well. It's not too big of a deal. Okay. So, that's the second question. The third one is a question for later down the line, but I want to think about how I test my modular kit to have the walls and have some metal slums, like little plate to the left of the screen. That's the plate that I just hid, by the way. Is that done through a PBR, or should I consider placing those on the walls as separate models? As a PBR? That's a different thing. I think you mean a blueprint, right? Like a blueprint or like a procedural thing. I wouldn't overcomplicate anything here. I would just keep it as yeah, manually placing stuff. It's not like you're creating a whole world, right? You just create this little alleyway. I would hand place a lot of stuff. What you can do to test your modular kit is have like a little play area where you just have like your buildings to see like how modular you can go for like that entire kit. Little art test area. And then number 4 is for the house on the back. I planned originally to just model them out and have the front side be different from the back so I could rotate them and have them look differently. So on that, I would honestly not worry about that at all, because there's a high likeliness that you will not see the buildings in the back anyway, and you can just have like a lot of heavy smog, and that will be more helpful for the storytelling without you needing to do like a bunch of buildings. So I wouldn't worry about that for now, and see whatever you need to do whenever you get to that point to like sell it. Let's see. But so far, the modular kit for this main street is not too complex, so I'm considering making a kit for it. Will it end up being better for down the road? For the road specifically? For this main street? I mean, yeah, it's something to try out. I think you're talking about like all the buildings, right? They are like, they're not really the same kind of level of detail though. Like they don't really share like a common architecture, right? Because we have like one warehouse, we have like one normal apartment building, like another normal apartment building, and then just like a bunch of stacks like from Ready Player One or something like that. So I don't know. Like a modular kit, just to give you like some insight, is just, it is built for the purpose of being like ultra scalable, right? If you just have like one street like this, if you don't have to do it because you're not making like a bunch of stuff, then you probably just avoid it, because it adds like a bunch of technical complexity to the whole thing, where if you can avoid it, that's less work, right? Yeah. So I hope that was helpful. I know that there was a lot of stuff here. A couple of next steps that I would do though is get everything that you want. No texturing, no fussing about with Substance Painter or anything like that. Just really quick. No, sorry, my wording is bad. I meant like down the road for the future. No, because what is likely going to happen is that you're not going to be using it in the future, because you're not going to be making like the same scene over and over again, right? And if you want to make a modular kit, then a modular kit is going to be specific to the architecture that you want to build. So I think I've done a lot of this stuff. Like a lot of this stuff, as in, I try to be smart for future work, and I've never used anything. Maybe that's also an indication of how dumb I am, but hey. Because there are people who are really smart, but that means that they also are restricted by like the kit that they've made, right? So I wouldn't worry about that. I would try to just focus on the thing at hand now. And then if you can repurpose something down the line, you might need to tweak it anyway, because your skills are going to get better as well. So you're going to have to redo stuff anyway. So I don't know. I don't think it's worth it, honestly. Trying to think so far ahead that you can use it between projects. There is one thing that I wanted to say. This is not going to be an easy project. There's a lot of noise that you're gonna have to balance. I would look up a lot of reference, see how games do it as well. Like, for example, Cyberpunk was brought up in the chat. I think that's a good shout to have a look at, like how they balance the amount of dirt that they have in like one street and how they do it. Yeah. Best of luck, Alejandro. Best of luck. There were a couple of questions in the chat as well. Let's see. 3D Art was saying, I was considering maybe getting a job as a product visualization artist to get into the 3D industry first to get some experience. Maybe that will impress recruiters. It will impress recruiters that are working in the product visualization industry. Yeah. But not the recruiters that are hiring for a games artist job, right? Like, sure, there is like an underlying knowledge of modeling, but there's still like a whole bunch of skills that you're missing if you're just going into product visualization. Because the big thing in games is that we are super restricted into the amount of topology that we can use, in the amount of textures that we can use, the way that we model stuff even. So there is like a slight reuse there, but I don't think it's worth doing this path where you go around trying to get a job as a visualization artist to then go into the games industry, because you might as well try to go for it directly, right? Thank you. My stream was a little bit delayed, so I didn't type anything to avoid confusion, but overall, thank you very much. This is my first bigger scale kind of an environment, so I'm getting used to it still. It is very daunting to do a scale of the scene. What I would do is I would like an action plan, right? Like the thing that I would focus on at this point. Okay, we're gonna give you like a 3-step plan basically. This is priority number 1. Well, we're gonna make it a little bit bigger. This is priority number 1. If this fails, the scene fails, right? Priority number 2 is this stuff. Right, so the street itself. Priority number 2. If we get that, we have enough assets that we can make like a whole street, we can make it look good, all that kind of stuff, so I'm not worried about that. I would honestly completely scrap the background for now. That is just my straight up honest opinion, because at the moment it's more like a distraction than it's actually adding to the scene. So that's where I would focus my time. Focus on the main building first, see that that is like laid out, blocked out, everything's looking really nice. Try to make it look like grounded and realistic as well, and then spread outwards, right? Like add on to it. I can tell this will be complicated, but it only means a lot of growth along the way. I'll take a look at Cyberpunk. Was also thinking the Arkham Knight game. I would look at realistic references first. And honestly, if you're looking at references at large, I would look at 90% real life reference, and then sprinkle in like 10% of like other references from games and movies and that stuff. That's the way that I would go about it. Let's get back to the question though. I know we're jumping a little bit all over the place. So let's see, where's my little chat here? Yeah, so 3D Art was asking about getting that job as a visualization artist, right? I don't think that is a roundabout way. I wouldn't do it. Video game development is coming in and saying, I don't have a lot of money to be able to buy programs like Houdini, but I use Blender, Substance Painter, and Designer Steam Edition, Marmoset Toolbag, and Unreal Engine 4. I use Unreal Engine 4 because my PC can't handle Unreal Engine 5. Isn't Houdini one of the few programs with a learner's license? Connor B is saying. Yeah, I think they have a learner's license. My question is, can I still create good portfolio pieces even if I'm using Blender and an older version of Unreal? Yeah, 100%. The tools that you use should not be restricting you from creating good art. Like, I mean, there is obviously like a fallback on that, right? Like, let's say, oh, you only have like Photoshop. Yeah, you're not going to be making good 3D art, right? I mean, it's going to be very, very difficult. But you have all the tools that I also use. I use Blender, which is free. I have 5 years out of date, like versions of Substance Painter that I probably don't use. Substance Designer that I use occasionally. I don't have Marmoset Toolbag, and I use Unreal Engine 5. Right? But that's it. You can make like kick-ass work with just Blender, Substance Painter. I'm trying to think. Yeah, you can make kick-ass work with just like 3 programs, honestly. Yeah, you can. That is true. You can go really deep inside of Blender and like do like texture creation and all that kind of stuff as well. But I would say at that point, it's probably better to look into like a version of Substance Painter that kind of fell out of like the back of the truck, if you know what I mean. You know? That's where I would be looking. It's got to be a little bit more creative then. Because like you can do it in Blender, but then that's not like industry standard and it's going to be annoying as hell. And then also once you do get access to Substance Painter, you're never going to be using that in Blender anymore. So that's where I'm kind of like, okay, you could, but then you're also wasting like a bunch of time and you're not taking like a sort of ideal path in it, right? Because basically modeling is sorted with Blender, rendering is sorted with Unreal, like setup and all that kind of stuff. You have a game engine that's free to use. So those things are done. It's just the texturing you might have to use like Painter and Designer. But yeah, the tools are never a restriction. I mean, yeah, most of the stuff that's on my portfolio is still like Unreal Engine 4. Jack Roy is asking, I want to work in a AAA studio like Naughty Dog as an environment artist. How would I achieve that? Which steps would I take? Which steps would you take? A whole bunch of fucking work. That's what it would take. I know that I'm being like very intense about it, but like if you want to work at like the big dogs, you're already aiming for like less than the 1% of all the people that get into the games industry at large, right? So you need to be the best of the best if you want to get there. Well, there's other things that go into it as well, right? It's not about like the pure skill set, it's also soft skills, it's also the location matters a lot as well, the people that you know and all that kind of stuff. So it's not only like your output. But the same thing still applies that I was saying before though. Like you start with the basics, you go from like making a singular asset, you learn the whole pipeline, you branch out to like the thing that interests you the most. You say environment art, so then you turn into like, oh, let's try to dial it up a notch, right? Like go from like one asset to like a couple of assets that then form like a consistent diorama that tells a story, and then learn trim sheets and all that stuff that comes into like environment art as well. That's like a really basic like overview. Blender has an add-on that is called like Yuzu Paint. Every day is getting closer to a similar workflow that you have inside Substance Painter. Another resource is Instamat program. It's an environment. It's an awesome tool. Yeah, there are other tools out there as well, like Armor Paint. Is also like one of the competitors with like Substance Painter as well. But the issue with most of those things is that the stuff that you're going to be learning in them. I mean, to be fair, I don't know about Yuzu Paint. Is that once you get into the industry, Substance Painter is what you're going to be using, right? So if it doesn't have like a comparable, setup, which to be fair, for Substance Painter, most of them do. So I don't think it's that big of an issue. But if they don't have a similar like workflow, then you're kind of spending a whole bunch of time into something where you might as well just like use Painter for it, you know, because that's what you're going to be using in the industry. What kind of post should I put on my portfolio and ArtStation and Instagram? Should I post just a few props and dioramas with props? Like how many should I post? It's not about quantity. It's about quality. That's really it. Like if the work is really good, like you can work your way up to like a job like really quickly, because you don't want to end up in a situation where you're just putting like a bunch of stuff out just to get like social media traction and get like a bunch of like attention, but the work is never going to be good enough to actually get you into the industry. There is like a separation that needs to happen between the social status that you get with like the amount of likes versus the actual technical and artistical ability that you need to have to get into the games industry. Because there's a bunch of people that make really cool art and they get like a bunch of likes, but it's not technically proficient and it's not capable to be done in like a game art pipeline. Right? So there's a difference there. Yeah. And it also like you can make a few props, and if that's the best props that everyone has ever seen, you're gonna get hired. You can make 1,000 dioramas and it's not gonna amount to anything, right? So it all comes down to this long, like, I'm gonna be like, honestly, like the road of like an artist to get into the games industry is long, is arduous. It's about like being really introspective and saying like, okay, I'm sort of here now. What is the next step that I need to take? What is the skill that I can improve? Okay, I'm gonna do like a project around that and just keep tweaking it. There's no like shortcut in the industry. Like there really isn't. Like there's I mean, trust me on this. Like if I knew like a 10-step program to get into the industry, I would have made like a shit ton of like social media posts about it already, because that would be so helpful. And another important thing is networking, because I don't post anything for like 2 to 3 years now, and I'm still getting clients because of networking. You can see your project direct. You can show your project directly to the client. Yeah. I think that is an important thing. But I mean, I 100% agree, right? And you mean it in this way as well. But I don't want people to get confused by like, oh, it's 50-50. It's like, no. Portfolio is like your work is 90% of the thing. And then everything on top of that, like your, well, let's say 80%, like your soft skills, the way that you treat people, your networking, all that kind of stuff is a top 20%. Because portfolio is king. Like the way that you do the work, and yeah, the way that you create the stuff that you create, that's why you get hired, right? Let's organize this really quick. But it is definitely an important skill to have, though. Portfolio is way more guaranteed. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm just thinking about like, I'm always curious about the questions, right? I mean, I get a lot of these questions asked, and it takes a lot longer, and this is so silly. It takes a lot longer than you expect. Like, to get in, to make portfolio pieces, to do like an asset or whatever you want to do, to learn a skill. Like, it takes a lot longer than you expect. This is so silly because like everyone used to they'd say this to me when I was in uni, and I was like, I'll show you. And I'm saying the exact same thing that other people are saying, so. Oh well. I'll say it, there is no best program. There is honestly the programs that you already know and the programs that are free. That's like the stuff that I look at, honestly. Any other programs, like, I mean, if you want to use the base tool set, right, you use like a modeling program, which can be 3ds Max, it can be Maya, it can be Blender, it can be Modo, it can be whatever, right? Because I mean, You just need a model. You just need an FBX at the end of the day. Yep, exactly. And then you just need like Painter to do some like textures, or Substance Designer for some textures. And then Unreal. Oh, Jose, that's all I got. Yeah, that's all I got too. I only have, what do I have currently installed? I have Blender, Substance Designer, which I use the most, and then I have Unreal. That's all I have. I don't have any other program. Anything on top of that, kind of just depends on what you want to do. There's very specific things, very specific programs that you could get for specific use cases, but we use the same programs, man. We use the same programs. Let's see, last one for today. Wanted to share another update. I've adjusted the God Ray, moved it a bit lower. Let's see. Would love to get some feedback on the RGB mass and anything else that can be improved. Ripple gradient. Yeah, let's have a look. That's cool. I like this guy. Guy's nice. I love it. 3D environment art for video games is a very slow process to create. My main advice is start from the beginning and don't waste energy into perfectionism. Enjoy what you're doing. Yeah. Yeah, it's like I was saying before, right? Start small and start way smaller than you expect. Like, in the beginning, literally take like a mug. Like if you're just starting out, right? Just take a mug and start with modeling. Modeling only. Like if you're literally fresh at the beginning. And then you only get to do like very complex stuff if you're really comfortable with the program that you're using, right? Because for example, what we always want to do is like, oh, I want to make like a weapon or a gun or whatever, right? Like that's like the most complex thing that I can think of. That is just not going to be possible in the beginning. Because even if you manage to get the shapes, like it's not going to set you up for success for the next steps that come afterwards. And those steps get even more complex. So take it slow, take it small, try to make every project about a new skill or a new thing that you want to learn, very specific. In the beginning, for me, it was modeling with primitives, right? Like just only primitives, no extrusions, whatever. That was the first thing that I did in 3D. Made like a little tank in like an hour. Just like smashing cubes and spheres together. Then the next thing was like, oh, did you know that we can extrude and all that kind of stuff? And it's like, oh, cool. Okay, let me try a bunch of stuff there. And then everything is just like building up from that. Like the little highlight here on the edge. That's cool. I like the improvements here as well. You got some like splotches in there, which look cool. Yeah, I think this looks really nice though. I don't really have too much to add here, honestly. The God Ray makes way more sense now. This is looking nice. Yeah, I like it. I love the roof. The roof is so good. Just a little roughness variation that you have going on there. It's so good. Maybe the thing that I can point out is like the lights. They're like in between emissive and not emissive. It just feels weird. Weird as in like they're half lit up, but they don't actually give off light. That's the way that it reads to me now. I don't know if it's just like a color thing, maybe like toning it down just a little bit. Maybe there is like a site emissive on there. Marcus was saying, for me, it was an accident. I got a 3D job even knowing how to do, without even knowing how to do UV mapping, because my 2D work was nice and I knew a few things on how to model base shapes. Yeah, I kind of went like very traditional, right? Like very stereotypical student in like a school, dying to get into game art, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I learned so much in the job as well. Oh my god. Yeah, honestly, this is the only thing that I can really bring up as well. Hey, Guillaume. Have a lovely evening. Thank you for popping in as well and sticking around. Appreciate it. All right. With that being said, that's my last bit of feedback for tonight. So let's switch it on over back here. Yeah, I'm not gonna make it too long because it is getting pretty late here as well. I do want to thank everyone for asking the good questions. Sometimes it gets tricky because some of the questions are nice, but I kind of want to give like a lot of context, so I usually tend to over-explain a bunch of stuff. But I hope it was helpful, and I really appreciate all the questions that everyone asked. And yeah, massive shout out to everyone who presented their work today. A lot of good stuff. As I always say, I'm so focused on giving feedback that I forget to say like how good shit looks. Yeah, the work on display looking kick-ass from everybody. So awesome job, everyone. Yeah, and with that being said, I'm gonna head on out here. I wish you all a nice evening or whatever part of the day it is. And then yeah, if you want to join the community, you'll find all the links down in the description. So go and check that out. Yeah, that being said, have a nice evening, everybody. Bye-bye.